In the case of Curtis Waymeyer, when did you first learn definitively that he had been accused of, or suspicions arose that minors were involved?
The day that he was arrested.
What day? Do you have that date?
If you remember, Archbishop, don't guess it if you don't know.
I don't remember. I believe it was a Friday, though. Do you remember that?
Some records show that his arrest was June 22nd. Is it correct? So, what did you learn on that date, and from whom?
I learned from, I believe it was Mr. Eisenzimmer, that Father McDonough had been informed of the allegation, and that he and Deacon Vomastik were going over to Blessed Sacrament to tell Father Waymeyer at the time that he was being removed from his assignment.
And you had received no information before that time and that date that Waymeyer had been suspected of involvement with minors?
No, I had not.
Had you received information that Waymeyer had been known to have been taking minors on camping trips?
No, I only became aware of that at the first week in October of 2013.
Did you ever, did you become aware that one of the officials had called the mother of one of the children who had been taken on camping trips to discuss that relationship?
I learned about that in October of 2013.
What did you learn about that? Who had made that call?
It was Father, at the time, Father Serba, Father Paul Serba, who was had just been appointed the Vicar General and moderated the Curia.
So he was empowered to handle this on your behalf, correct?
He was.
Okay. And so, when you learned on October 13th, then, that minors were involved, definitively, October 13th.
No, it's October 2013.
Oh, excuse me, October of 2013. What did you do about that?
I don't understand the question.
Oh, okay. Okay. What was the date? The 22nd. So I want to get my dates correct. I think you had told me earlier that the date you first learned that minors were involved was the date that he was arrested. And some records show that he was arrested on the 22nd. Does that sound right?
That's when I first learned about the allegation, yes.
And what action, if any, did you take responsive to having learned that?
That day, I agreed with the decision when Mr. Eisenzimmer told me that they were, that Father McDonough and Deacon Vomastik wanted to go over there. I said yes, do it right away.
And that was before it had been reported to the police, though, wasn't it?
I think it was reported at the same time. I think they were simultaneous.
Why would you want Father McDonough and Deacon Vomastik to go to Curtis Waymeyer before it had been reported to the police?
Well, in hindsight, that was a mistake. But I think we wanted to act immediately on the information that we had.
And you're aware that Father McDonough and Deacon Vomastik met with Waymeyer that morning at the parish?
I think it was morning or afternoon. It was.
And you're aware that they retrieved the gun and got a computer from Waymeyer, correct?
objection. I'm not sure that that's facts and evidence, counsel. Again, if
Are
you've
you
got
aw-
something to show him that, ask him.
Are you aware?
I heard about the gun. I didn't know about the computer.
Is that the first you've heard of having Waymire having turned a computer over to McDonough?
To my recollection, right now, yes.
So you never looked at the computer of Waymire?
No.
And that if McDonough took possession of it, that where is that computer?
I don't know, sir. This is the first I've heard of that, so.
I'm going to show you exhibit. Who else did you talk to besides Eisenzimmer about this then that day?
That day, I don't believe I spoke to anyone else about this.
And once you learned it, why didn't you report it?
My presumption was that the one that would normally do the reporting is the civil chancellor. And so my understanding was that he was going to report it and had already reported it, had called the police.
Do you believe the mandatory reporting statute that applies to you permits the delegation of your responsibility to somebody else? Don't you?
I have the authority, but I believe that as long as that things are done correctly, that's what's important.
The statute provides you an obligation, not an authority, correct?
I believe so.
Objection. It's a legal conclusion. The statute speaks for itself.
What did Eisenzimmer tell you about when the Archdiocese had first gotten a report, when you talked to him?
He told me that morning.
That morning of the 22nd?
Yes.
All right, let me show you Exhibit 18. And before I do, let me just ask you, Archbishop, what did you find out specifically about who had made the report then about Waymire to law enforcement and when?
Could you repeat the question?
What did you find out about who had reported and when they made that report?
I'm sorry, to the police or to the Archdiocese?
To the Archdiocese.
I think I learned later that day, is my recollection, that the police had been called and that Father McDonough and Deacon Vomastic had gone over to bless the sacrament.
Who was the first in the Archdiocese then to have received the information that minors were involved?
That would have been Father John Paul Erickson.
And what were you told about that?
I was told that he was informed of that, that the person in question had told him that there had been an incident of incest in the family.
Well, let's go back. I'm talking about the abuse of the child, and by Waymire. Okay. So, is it your testimony that was imparted by Father Erickson?
Father Erickson was the first one, I believe, to have been told of the abuse. Because the mother in question had discovered some incest in the family. And she had subsequently, in talking to her children about that, discovered the involvement of Father Waymire. And she went back and told Father John Paul Erickson again. and but it was in the context of spiritual direction, so it was a privileged context. So he had to call her and get her to report this to us outside of that context and to the police.
Who told you that?
Father John Paul Erickson.
When did he tell you that?
I believe that was, excuse me, I misspoke myself. I think Andy Eisensimmer told me that the same day of the...
On June 22nd?
Yes.
Were you told that the report had been made in the context of the confessional?
I hadn't been told that it was in the context of confession. What I had been told is it was in the context of spiritual direction.
And you also knew that Erickson was a mandatory reporter?
Yes.
And that what he had been told would require a report?
Correct.
Have you talked to Father Erickson to get some more clarity about what he was actually told and the circumstances of it since?
I have not, no.
Why not?
I thought he did what he should have done, and the end result was what needed to be done to get Father Waymeyer out of to get him reported to the police and to take him out of ministry.
What should he have done?
Well, in hindsight, I suppose he should have taken this to the police himself once he had clarified the context of which the communication had taken place.
And do you have any knowledge that he did?
I do not have.
And your knowledge to this date as to who actually made a report to the police then is limited to, who is that to?
To Mr. Eisensimmer.
The same day that you learned?
I believe so, yes.
Same day that McDonough and Bombastek had gone to visit Waymeyer at the parish?
That is correct.
I'm going to refer you to Exhibit 18. And you have it before you, Archbishop, and this is entitled A Decree, and is typewritten with your name at the bottom, correct?
Correct.
And it states, on June 18th, 2012, the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis received a complaint that Reverend Curtis Waymeyer, a priest of this archdiocese, supplied alcohol and sexually explicit images to a minor and fondled or attempted to fondle the minor's genitals, period. Correct?
Yes, correct.
It then goes on to state, I have concluded that this constitutes information which, quote, at least seems to be true, unquote. Correct?
Correct.
So this reflects that on June 18th, the information was received. Does it not?
It does, but it's incorrect.
And who prepared this?
Jennifer Hasselberger.
And what makes you say that, or believe that, assert that it's incorrect?
Because I have since learned that the information didn't come to us officially until the morning of the 22nd.
Well, mandatory reporting doesn't make a distinction between official and unofficial. So what do you mean by official?
Again, objection to the legal conclusion in the start of your
What do you mean
question.
by official?
What I mean by official is the context in which it was first revealed was a context that was privileged. And so what I refer to as privilege is the part that's not privileged.
Okay. It goes on to say, the third paragraph, since my other duties prevent me from conducting this investigation personally, I hereby appoint Reverend Peter Laird, Vicar General, to act as investigator in this matter, correct? You did that?
Correct.
And then you also, at the fourth paragraph, instructed that in conducting his investigation, Father Laird is to take care that such investigation does nothing to harm Father Waymeyer's name or to violate his rights to protect his privacy, correct?
Correct.
Is there anything in this decree that talks about protecting the victim or their family?
The decree, to my understanding, is a canonical document that pertains particularly to a priest who has acted out badly.
Did you sign the decree before Vomisteck and McDonough went to the parish?
No, I did not.
When did you sign it?
Well, I couldn't have signed it on the 20th. So the dates here are wrong.
Well, that's where we're going to go right now. It says, given on June 20th, 2012, and then it's signed by you.
Correct.
So you're now asserting that that date is also incorrect.
Correct.
And you're asserting that's incorrect on what basis?
On the basis that subsequently I found out that I learned this on the 22nd, so I couldn't have signed it on the 20th.
This is a pretty serious matter when you issue a decree for an internal investigation, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that is your signature, so you did sign it. You're just
I did sign it,
disputing
yes.
the dates, is that right?
Right.
Okay. So you did order internal investigation. Did you order this internal investigation before or after the report that the police was made?
My best recollection, it was after.
You're not sure about that, are you?
Well, this whole period is a rather confusing one.
You're not sure about any of these dates, are you, really?
Objection,
Well-
that's argumentative, counsel. He's testified to what he can testify to.
Well, you did. Are you? You're not sure about the dates, are you?
I'm sure that these dates are wrong.
And what document is there that establishes, other than this document, this decree, exactly when you learned then of the abuse of the minor?
I'll object, first of all. The decree, Exhibit 18, does not establish that, as the Archbishop said.
Well, first
Go
paragraph
ahead as
does,
to
but
whatever.
The question is when did you first, what document is there, if there is one, that can establish the date you learned it?
There would not be a document. I'm giving my testimony of what I recall.
The conversation with Eisen Zimmer, was that in person or by telephone?
It was in person
At the Chancery?
at the Chancery, yes.
In his office or yours?
My office, he came down to my office.
Anybody else present?
No,
Did you make any notes of that conversation?
I did not.
Has there been any record made by him of that conversation?
I don't know that.
Has there been made any record by anybody that you know of in or out of the Archdiocese that establishes that the report was actually received by you on the 22nd versus Exhibit 18, which seems to demonstrate the 18th?
I don't know of any other document, no. It's unfortunate.
There is evidence that on the 19th, there was, or 20th, there was a meeting called by Greta Sawyer, and she was employed to interview this mom and child. Were you aware of that?
I was, yes.
You ordered that as a part of the investigation, did you not? And empowered Laird to do it.
I don't believe that was the right order.
Well, you decreed an investigation, and Laird was given the authority to do it.
That's
and he was
correct.
given the authority to give to her to interview these people, right?
That I don't remember. My understanding is that that the mother had been advised to go to see Greta to reveal this allegation.
Right. Been advised by either Erickson or Laird, correct?
I think it was Father Erickson.
Right.
Yes.
And so she did, and she brought the child at the request of Father Erickson, correct?
That I don't know.
And you're aware that an interview was conducted of the child at that time.
I wasn't aware of that, no.
Is that news to you?
That is news to me. My understanding was that the mother went, and until now I had not heard that she brought the child with her.
The child was interviewed, according to the records that we have, at one of the Chancery offices on the 20th by Greta Sawyer, and tape recorded. Is that news to you?
It is.
And that it could have been the 19th or the 20th. In any case, that would be before you claim a report was even made to the police. Correct?
Well, my understanding of the sequence of things all revolves around this privileged context, and my understanding was that Father Erickson had suggested, because he didn't feel he could break the confidentiality of the conversation, that she should go to see Greta Sawyer.
Well, the interview done by Greta Sawyer was done at your offices, at the Hayden Center.
At the Hayden Center, yes.
Yes. And that was not a confessional, secret kind of thing. That was done at the request of Greta Sawyer and Father Laird, correct?
That I don't know.
Well, weren't you overseeing this?
I was overseeing it. My understanding is that it was Father Erickson that had advised the woman to go to see Greta Sawyer and to reveal this event and the allegation therein.
Did Greta Sawyer tell you about the meeting before it happened?
No, she did not.
Did Laird tell you that they were going to meet before it happened?
No, he did
Did
not.
Erickson?
No, he did not.
So you didn't know it was going to be?
I did not know.
On the 21st of June, there's an indication of a meeting in the morning between Hesselberger, Laird, and Eisenzimmer. Are you aware of that?
Not know.
That's news to you?
It is.
Have you looked at any of the documentation pertaining to this matter at all?
No, I didn't know it existed.
At 9:42, there is an indication that a litigation hold was placed, and there was an instruction given by Andy Eisenzimmer on that day to not destroy any files or evidence. Are you aware of that?
I'm not. No.
Had there been some destruction of files and evidence before this time? Of
No.
any cases that you're aware of,
No.
that you know of?
No, I did not.
Why would he give such an instruction if that hadn't been a practice in play before?
I have no idea. It was not our practice.
After you then first met with Eisenzimmer and learned what you claimed to have learned, what was the next thing you did, or what did you do responsive to the information you received?
I instructed him to do what he had told me we should do as the next steps, which was to inform the law and the the police, and then to inform Father Waymeyer of the accusation.
And it's your belief you prepared the decree then after that time?
That's my recollection, yes. I didn't prepare it. Jennifer Hasselberger prepared it.
But you signed it?
I did sign it, yes.
So, and she was authorized to prepare it as your
Correct.
candidate lawyer?
Correct.
Did you read it?
I read it, but I wasn't paying attention to the dates per se. I was looking at the content of the statement.
In the first paragraph, you are reciting when you received the information, and you use both a quote and an I, don't you?
Yes,
You read that, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. When's the next time you received any information from any source pertaining to either the internal investigation or Waymeyer status?
Well, I had asked, as the document indicates, I asked for a regular report from Father Laird, and so that would have been given to me, generally speaking, at our weekly meetings, which is on Tuesday mornings.
Was that after the arrest?
Yes, it would have been after the arrest.
So is it correct to say that the only information you had and the only source of that information before the arrest of Waymeyer was that told you by Andy Eisenzimmer and nothing else? Is that what
Correct.
you're saying?
Correct.
And you've told us everything that Andy Eisenzimmer told you?
Correct. What I
And
recall, yes.
Talking
And-
about that day, right?
pertaining to that subject, yes. Do you have any discussions of having meetings with your top officials at that time, Hesselberger, Laird, Eisenzimmer, about whether it either should be reported or should have been reported sooner?
I don't recall any discussions on that at that time. I know that there were discussions of that subsequently when it was reported in the newspaper, but at that time I don't recall any discussion of that.
What discussions are you talking about subsequently? What was said by and by whom?
When there was a sequence of discussions that took place, I believe, in early October of 2013, about what the dates were and how the sequence fell out. And there was a great deal of confusion about that. And of course, Jennifer had already left our employ at that point, so we weren't able to ask her about the confusion of the dates.
Who have you asked about it to try to clear it?
We talked about it in terms of my staff at the time. It would have been Mr. Kippers and Susan Mulheron, and I believe our communications director. That we were trying to figure out the sequence of how that all happened.
And you're talking about Jim Accurso?
He was not involved in the
Who was the communication director then?
Sarah Mealy.
So really your discussions are more about communications management and crisis management than trying to get to the bottom of really what happened.
Objection.
No,
That's
no,
argumentative and misstates facts.
I would not agree to that. No.
Well, then why have the communications person involved?
Because she was involved in all of our discussions.
But that's for purposes of public relations. I'm interested in the one that you did about protecting the children and making sure you adhered to the law. Why did you bring a communications person into that conversation?
Well, because this was subsequent. This was in October 2013, as I'm saying. But when I first discussed it after the event had taken place, we acted immediately to inform the police and to make sure that he was taken off of the premises so that he couldn't be a threat to the children.
You have made, and your office has made a number of statements that you have acted immediately to inform the police concerning Waymire. And do you make those statements to try to assure the people that they can trust what you say about child safety and your reporting of it?
We say that because that's our policy. And as we would say in any other situation, we would quote our policy. And this is the way we act, and we let people know that.
Jennifer Hasselberger has been very critical of you in the way you handled Waymire. Has she not?
I don't know. I haven't talked to her about it.
Well, you've seen the NPR reports where she has.
I've heard her quoted, but I haven't talked to her directly about this.
And she has reported very publicly that you did not report when you learned that Waymire had abused.
Well, she's inaccurate on that. She's not correct.
And as a canon lawyer, she's your record keeper, isn't she?
She should be.
And you have no records today, nor are you aware of any that contradict the assertions she has about what you told her and when it was reported, correct?
I have my memory, and my memory doesn't correspond to what you're telling me she has said.
I think we need to take a break here, so let's take a short break.
We're going off the record at 1:44 p.m.
Let's go off the video record for a moment.
Yeah, what is the actual time, videographer, of what we've got on videotape deposition?
I have 3 hours, 35 minutes, and 52 seconds.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We are back on the record at 2:03 p.m.
Archbishop, because you made a correction at the start of the last section concerning Shelley, I'm going to go back and try to get your testimony concerning some of the things that need to be asked, given that correction, that weren't asked because of your testimony given for it. I'm going to show you an exhibit 38. And it is a memo from you, excuse me, from Jennifer Hasselberger to you, correct?
Correct.
And pertaining to Shelley in February of 2012.
Correct.
At that time, at the bottom of the second paragraph, it reflects Shelley was without supervision. Was that your understanding?
Archbishop, just read the document, the entire document,
No.
so you have it in context.
No, you're not.
Well, counsel, you can't ask out of context.
Go off the record. Let me.
Well, no, he's not going off the record. He has a right to read the deposition.
No, we're not going to have him reading documents, taking the time on the record. That's intended to delay the process.
You want to ask a question about a document that's in front of the Archbishop, and you want to be unfair and not let him read to see what the context is? Is that your position?
No, we'll take a break, let him read it.
Well, why would you take a break? When do you ever do that in a deposition? This is a deposition.
We don't
Ask
have-
your questions.
We don't have people that are trying to delay the depositions like you.
I hardly am trying to delay the deposition. If questions were asked properly, it would have been much quicker.
Mr. Hawes, you're an officer of the court. You know better than this.
I am.
We'll take it up with the judge, but I'll tell you right now, I'm gonna read a portion from this, then ask you a question, Archbishop. In this memorandum, to you, she states the reason this was not given more attention in 2008 only became clear recently. For while there is reference to the misconduct in Father Shelley's green personnel file, the detailed information relating to the misconduct, including the investigator's report, was of 48 restricted files that were archived, meaning moved to the basement without reference to it being placed in the personnel files in early months of 2008. Do you remember discussing that with her at that time?
I don't at this moment. I don't recall discussing that with her.
She goes on to state, and I'll ask you, I have attached a list of files that were removed to the archives, although we have not been able to locate all the files on the list. Were there files moved to the archives, Archbishop?
We have 2 archive rooms, and the files of active priests are in one, files of priests who have left and priests who are dead would be in another room.
And in the same memo at the second page, there's a recitation of various things known about Shelley. My question to you is, as stated in the memo to you, she says in 2004, while Shelley was assigned to St. Jude, Father Shelley's
counsel, can you just tell him where you're reading from?
at the top, Shelley's personal computer, one of 3, was mistakenly donated to the parishioner during the parish garage sale. Do you know what happened to the 3 computers?
I only see here one of 3.
Yeah, but I'm talking about there were 3 computers. Do you know what happened to those 3 computers?
I know that the one computer that they referred to was ultimately turned in by the person who received the donation. He came to the Archdiocese about it. I don't know what happened to the other 2 computers.
There's also reference to the Archdiocese ordering an investigation and a computer analysis to be done of the machine. Did you see that yourself?
I did not.
You were told there were images on there by the experts that did the analysis that there was questionable or borderline child pornography, were you not?
I did read the context, and I think it said they were borderline, but they didn't think it was child pornography.
But there were questions about that, were there not?
I think there were questions for Jennifer.
And you had questions about that.
I did.
And aren't questions the same as suspicions enough to justify a report to the police at that time?
sincerely thought that what we were doing with this outside investigation, that the person, the forensic person, and the retired policeman had the wherewithal to make that decision.
You say outside investigation. The fact of the matter is, this is a
Well, an inside,
internal investigation.
yeah.
That is
with an outside company.
an outside company hired by the Archdiocese.
Correct.
To find out for them
Yeah.
what's on it, right?
Right.
Okay. And all of this investigation was done and handled by those retained and those in your office, correct? Nobody outside the Archdiocese.
You're
Well-
referring to the 2004 timeframe here?
I'm referring to the two. Yes.
Well, what I meant by outside was that they weren't people that worked directly for us on our staff.